All right, hi everyone. Welcome back to another video. Today I'm going to be giving you a 30-second review for every single one of the 80 games that I played in 2023. So I'm allowed 30 seconds, no more, no less, and well, it could be less, or I will be severely punished if I go over the time limit. What is the punishment, you ask? That's up to you. You can roast me in the comments. The greatest punishment all, embarrassment in front of your peers. So with that, we're already running out of time. Let's go. First up, Uncharted Golden Abyss. This is the handheld Uncharted game on the Vita. I actually replayed this because I wanted to have I was trying to go for trophies, basically. So I was wanting something that was chill, easy, that I could play while I was watching some games done quick, some speedruns. And all in all, it ended up being a lot of fun. It's a good game. I replayed it on Crushing, and I think it's still deserving of the praise it got. One of the better handheld AAA games. Okay, Hue. Hue is an indie puzzle platformer. I had not played it before prior to this year. I played this also on Vita. I was playing a lot of Vita stuff in the early part of the year, and all throughout the year, honestly. You use colors to make certain platforms either appear or disappear because they blend into the color that you chose in the background. It's pretty fun. It's pretty short and a little bit simple, but all in all, it's a pretty dang good time. I'd recommend it. Crash Bandicoot Warped. I have played the first two a lot growing up, especially Crash Bandicoot 2, and I decided I wanted to check out Warped. This was via the Insane Trilogy. Had a lot of fun with it. It's not my favorite Crash Bandicoot game because it does have, a little bit too much variety, as odd as that is to say. It wasn't my all-time favorite in that regard. But it was a fun platinum to go for and an enjoyable time, and I'm looking forward to cleaning up the rest of the trophies for that collection. Sumioni. This is an import PlayStation Vita game, physically at least. Only came out in Japan. It might have come out here in English digitally. But it is a side-scrolling action beat-em-up with a very watercolor painterly art style. Think something like Okami adjacent, and you'll kind of get the idea. It's pretty fun. It's pretty simple, and it has this weird system where as you progress through stages, you need to fulfill certain criteria to get further, which makes getting a little bit further pretty tough. Exile's End. This is a Metroidvania gated exploration game. Pretty basic. At first, I was not into it because you have fall damage, pretty aggressive fall damage. But that's one of the first upgrades you get corrects that. And then from that point on, it was a really good time. So I had a lot of fun with it. It was, it's not going to stick in my memory forever, but it's enjoyable. I enjoyed it enough to do a second run through and do a speed run to get the final trophy for it. So it wasn't terrible. Bomberman Fantasy Race. This is PlayStation 1 Bomberman kart racer, except you're riding on animals and stuff. Pretty fun. I streamed this one. It's very much the type of weird, goofy game that I enjoy streaming, and I think everybody had a good time with it. This is certainly not going to blow your mind. This is not going to be, your Mario Kart replacement or anything like that, but if you kind of know what you're going into, you go and expect a little bit of jank, but a lot of creativity and a lot of novelty. You're certainly you can do a lot worse than Bomberman Fantasy Race. IAVT Colorful. This is another import physical Vita game. This is a rhythm game based on IAVT must be some sort of Vocaloid. I don't know if it is one or a group of Vocaloids, but it's a lot of Vocaloid music. And I picked it back up because I was in the mood for a rhythm game. I love rhythm games in general. And it was a good trophy grind. I was really in a trophy place in the beginning of this year, actually for most of this year. So I had a lot of fun with it, and I do recommend it for rhythm game fans. Sly Cooper and the Three Vs Raccoonus. I had never played this game before. I love Jak and Daxter. I love Ratchet and Clank, but Sly Cooper was a huge blind spot for me. Finally got around to playing it via the Sly Collection on PlayStation 3. Fell in love. It's incredible. It immediately shot up to above Ratchet and Clank in my heart and mind. And maybe, probably not above the first Jak and Daxter, but it's definitely in contention with that. One of the all-time great 3D platformers, and definitely a don't miss type of game. Hindsight. I'm on a quest eventually to beat every Annapurna published game, which is hard because they keep publishing new ones. But this was a game focused around rotating objects, and when you rotate them in certain ways, you're ultimately able to kind of see locations inside them and transport to those locations. Pretty simple game. I like the idea, the gameplay of the nostalgia we have for objects directly in the gameplay, but it's a little bit slight. I don't know. Pepsi Man. Do I really need to explain Pepsi Man to you? It's an auto runner. It's incredible. One of the better PS1 imports you're ever going to find. It certainly lives up to its reputation. Even if you only go into YouTube and watch those cutscenes of the like slobby American dude in between the levels, you're still going to have a good time. Another one that I streamed, and I was happy to finally be able to present it to the world. Even though a lot of people have seen it by now, I feel like it's one of those things where everyone could always use a little more Pepsi Man. Gamera 2000, one of my biggest surprises this year. So this is another import PS1 game, and it plays like Star Fox. Or actually, it plays more like Panzer Dragoon. That's a better comparison, because you can rotate the camera around. But it's just gorgeous. Again, 360-degree field of attack, tons of cool enemies, good difficulty, big spectacle, which is exactly what you want from this type of game. I don't even know anything about Gamera, and I still had an amazing time, as did my chat, so... Resogun. Never played this much other than when the PS4 came out at buddies' houses. I didn't have a PS4 at launch, so I kind of missed this when it was a PS Plus game, but decided to go back, wanted to check it out. I'm a big fan of Housemarque. I played a lot of Returnal this year, even though you won't see it on this list. And wow, I see where all the hype is. It's just so fun. It's so addicting. Simple. It's Defender, but Resogun puts their own spin on it with big cool bosses and stuff. And yeah, really just great pick up and play. In the legacy of Super Stardust. Oh no, we're behind time. Toy Story 2. This is a 3D collectathon platformer. I played the PS1 version via the PlayStation Classics collection. I used to rent this game a lot. If you are into this era of 3D platformers or licensed jank, although this game isn't even jank, you're going to have a good time. I think that this one is super fun. And yeah, I highly recommend that more people check it out because it's a little bit slept on. We bought ourselves some time. The Swapper. This is a 2013 indie game, I think. This is a replay for me. This is another one that I picked back up to go through and get the collectibles and clean up the trophy list. Really cool game that's all about you using clones and warping between them to solve puzzles. Great atmosphere, very dark, moody. Has a good, if a little basic, but still interesting sci-fi story involving clones where you're kind of exploring the ideas of where do you end and the clone begin? What is your consciousness, etc.? Worth it. Theatrhythm Final Bar Line. I love music rhythm games, as I said. I love Final Fantasy games, as you know. And I love Theatrhythm. So when this came out, it was a match made in heaven. I was a little anxious that they would, not clutch it because there was touch controls in the old one, but they did a great job translating it to controller. There's hundreds and hundreds of songs, and they're adding great new DLC all the time from other Square Enix games. One of my most played games this year, and super highly recommended to people. What the Bat. This is a VR game from the same studio that did What the Golf, and it's very, very much in line with What the Golf. So the premise initially is basically you have bats for hands, and your goal is to hit like a baseball or some other object. But very much in What the Golf fashion, the studio constantly is pulling the rug out from under you, doing visual gags, messing with your expectations, stuff like that. And so it ends up being a lot goofier than that, and it's a good time. Puss in Boots, more licensed jank, this time on the PS3. We streamed this one. It's an interesting game. It has like a sort of behind the back, on rails almost, kind of action combat system. It's really unusual. But even for someone like me who had never seen the movie, I still thought it was an enjoyable time. Would I highly recommend it to people? I don't know that I'd go that far, but if you are like me and you like, slumming it a bit, I think you can have a good time with Puss in Boots. Horizon Call of the Mountain. This is the PlayStation VR2 launch game in the Horizon universe. I have never played a Horizon game. I never played Zero Dawn or Forbidden West. This was my first, which meant that the story was a little confusing, but I was still able to kind of mostly glean what was going on. Really fun game. Great, introduction to VR2. All those climbs, such heights looking down, really feel the pit of your stomach start to drop. Like you can't convince your brain that it isn't real. So I'd say if you have VR2, obviously get it. Oh no, Frogun. This is a retro-inspired modern indie game. It's kind of like a top-down, sort of isometric, but not really. It looks like Mega Man Legends, but it plays like a more deliberate platformer. You use this frog gun, hence the name, that will let you, collect objects, traverse gaps, things like that. And it's pretty good. I would say that if you're going for the Platinum Trophy, it overstays its welcome, but otherwise, I'd highly recommend it to people. Xerxes. I played this for the Polykill Alphabet Challenge. So one game beaten for every letter of the alphabet. X is a hard one to come by, and I had this on the NES backlog. Really cool game. You swap between side-scrolling 2D levels and side-scrolling shooter levels every other, and there's also some like Blaster Masher style dungeons in there. So if you like a good variety, solid music, it's just all in all one of the, a tight, fun, like a B+ on NES. New Super Mario Bros. 2. This is the one with all the coins in it, and it is fine. I don't know. It's after playing Super Mario Bros. Wonder this year, I kind of realized that this one is somewhat bland, but it's still not bad. I'm always hesitant to say that because people dunk on the new Super Mario Bros. Series a little too hard. I think they're good games, but I would be lying if I said that this one left a craterous impact on me. It just sort of came and went. Fun stream, but not a core shaker. Siphon Filter. I used to talk to a buddy of mine in high school a lot about this game, and I played it on demo discs and stuff, but never got too far. I may have even owned a copy back in the day, but decided to finally check it out because it came to the PlayStation Classics library on PS5. And while it has many of the flaws and trappings of game design of that era, it also is still a surprisingly solid and competent game. I think for my money, I still prefer the Splinter Cell games, but Siphon Filter, I see the hype. Imposter Factory. We played this one as a podcast unit, so I have a podcast called Indie Quest. You can check the link in the description below, all about indie games, and we were doing a retrospective on all of these To the Moon, Finding Paradise, and now Imposter Factory, the games in that series. This is the last one we needed to do, and I played through it, loved it. Not going to be my favorite of the trilogy, but if you like heartfelt kind of adventure, visual novel style games in Super Nintendo RPG visual style, definitely check it out. Play the other ones first. Clive and Wrench, jank 3D platformer. I cannot recommend this game in good consciousness to anyone other than Ari Lewis 2011 if he's listening, but he did not need me to recommend it to him. It is rough. I liked it, but it's rough. There's no denying that. I have a taste for jank. I like to slum it. I like to put a little bit of garbo in my mouth from time to time. And I really liked what this game is going for. You can tell that the designer it has a lot of heart. You can tell that they cared, but the pieces don't come together. It's too buggy. Not a recommend. Rime. This is the Eco-alike that came out on PS4. I'm a huge fan of Eco, and so a game that's emulating Eco, I'm still going to appreciate quite a bit. This was another replay for me to clean up the collectibles and trophies, because I'm trying to get a lot of the games that I like onto my profile as a platinum trophy. Still a really good time. I highly recommend it. I think this is one of the sleeper games of the PS4 generation. A lot of people don't talk about it, but it is really quite good. Maybe a little heavy-handed in its messaging, but if you want Eco with a lot of color, definitely check out Rime. Rez Infinite. I love Rez. One of my favorite games ever, honestly. And I decided to again clean up the platinum on this one. Honestly, don't really recommend it. I recommend Rez so much. Incredible game, especially if you can play Rez Infinite in VR. Check out Area X. It's awesome. The platinum itself, though, you had to replay the game like 30 times in a row. But the first 10, I was loving, and then I was sort of on autopilot from that point on. Rez still is just a masterclass, though. Merlin Racing. This is on the Nuon, and I beat it. Who can say they beat a Nuon game other than me this year? Felt good. I mean, the game itself is completely average. I think it's actually from a developer that churns out a lot of sort of clone kart racers, so there's other similar ones on PS1. But in terms of playing a Nuon, having fun, it was one of my best streams. Everyone was goofing around, having a good time. The AI is terrible, though. The rubber banding is rough. It basically comes down to RNG in the last 30 seconds of a race. Last Clockwinder, another VR game. This is one where you are recording your actions to kind of build automation. So I can, grab a fruit, switch hands, and throw it, and then I can record that so that I can set up another one that catches the fruit that was just thrown to me and places it in a bin. And you ultimately end up setting automations of 15 or so robots in some cases. It's really cool. Highly recommend if you have a VR for sure. A lot of fun. Chia, the open world indie game based on New Caledonia. Gorgeous game. All the pieces of this, all of the component pieces, sound design, soundtrack, character animation, visuals, environment, all that stuff is incredible. It's just a gorgeous world to explore and be in with a bunch of goofy, fun characters. And I love the soul mechanic where you can hop into animals and objects and possess them. A lot of icons on the map, though, can get a little overwhelming, and the combat isn't great. Quest Fantasy Challenge. I barely remember this game. It's a Game Boy Color puzzle game. I think it's top down. This is a good opportunity for me to take a sip of my beverage. I love it when a game leaves no impact at all, right? I played it. I played it to get the Q letter for the Polykill Challenge, but at the end of the day, can't say I recall too much about it. I think it was really, really short. That's the problem, is I beat it in like 20 minutes. Disney's Magical Quest, starring Mickey Mouse. I believe this is the first one, although it's being cut off, because I know I played multiples this year. Disney Magical Quest, this is a Game Boy Advance port of the Disney's Magical Quest game. Pretty dang fun, enjoyable. I think that these Game Boy Advance ports of these originally were Super Famicom games are pretty solid. If you like, Disney 2D platformers of that era, you're obviously going to like it. If you don't, this isn't doing anything crazy fresh to convince you to check it out. Papatura. Ooh, one of my biggest disappointments this year. Great visual style. So the entire game is built out of paper, almost like imagine claymation, but pape-mation instead. Really looks good. But the gameplay itself is very slow, very plodding. It's just really basic puzzles. Your character moves incredibly slowly. It's just not very inspired. There's nothing that really jumps out at you or nothing really memorable about it. Not too much. There we go. Disney's Magical Quest 3 starring Mickey and Minnie. So this is the more desirable of these. I mean, they're all kind of desirable, but this one in particular, because this game was a Super Famicom exclusive in Japan, I think. It never came out in the States in any capacity. Also pretty dang fun game. A little more involved, but these all, for better or worse, they kind of run together in my mind, but they run together in a way where I enjoyed all of them, so it's not a bad thing. So if you can get your hands on a copy somehow, play it. Grandia. Ugh, what a special game. So Grandia is a turn-based RPG to the stars, right? I played this one for a couple months before my son was born. Shout out to my son who was born this year. And then I beat it with him sleeping in my arms because he needed to be held in the first month of his life while he napped. And yeah, I loved everything about it. The soundtrack, the characters, the battle system, everything was so good. I regret not playing it sooner. I love Grandia 2, and now I love Grandia 1. Jumping Flash. This was after my son was born. In fact, Grandia is the first game I beat after my son was born. This is a couple months after he was born now. I needed something short and easy to play. This is a prototype first-person platformer, or rather, it's an early PlayStation game, and you can see that it is a prototype for what platforming would ultimately go on to be. This is sort of like an experiment, an evolutionary dead end, you could call it. Really weird, very like 90s with all of the random shapes floating around. Fun. 7 Segments Journey. This was a Game Jam game developed by Potomax, who is an all-time superstar and a member of our Polykill community. He designed this for some puzzle Game Jam, and it plays like, to my sensibilities, it plays like Chips Challenge meets like Threes. It's a top-down kind of block pusher, but you are combining different blocks into larger and larger numbers, like you do in Threes. And it was really quite good. He should flesh it out into a full game. Humanity. This is published by Enhanced Games. I don't think it was developed by them, but it definitely has their vibe, right? So this is the new puzzle game where it's kind of like Lemmings, but you're controlling seas of like tons of human bodies, living humans, walking people, not like dead bodies. It's such a vibe. I loved it, my time with it. I like that it kind of goes off the rails and goes in a whole new direction in the back half. Just so cool. That studio can't miss. Artful Escape. This is another Annapurna published game. This is the rock opera one, so everything is like bright, psychedelic, kind of like 70s rock visuals, space opera in particular. So it's mostly like a left to right, pretty basic platformer, but it's more about the experience of playing it. Tons of like guitar shredding and crazy over the top like metal music and stuff like that. I thought I was going to like it more than I did. I thought it was fun, but it wasn't as good as I was hoping. I'd give it like a 7 out of 10. Mario Kart Super Circuit. I need something short and sweet to play. I played this on my Analog Pocket. I'm not as big of a fan of this or Super Mario Kart's style. I appreciate them for what they look like, but I don't think they play as well. Although I'd be lying if I didn't say that I had fun with Super Mario or Mario Kart Super Circuit. It was a good time in the time that I played it. This is another one, though, that couldn't leave too big of an impact because I beat it in like an hour. But now I can say that I've finished every Mario Kart game. Mail Mole. This is a very unknown 3D platformer that is all about delivering mail as a mole. You are constantly under the ground, so you're, as a mole does, you're digging tunnels through the ground, and then you can jump out of the ground briefly to hop over gaps or attack enemies or clear obstacles or things like that. So it's got interesting movement relative to other 3D platformers. And it's a pretty full featured and fun game. There's a lot of collectibles to find. There's like speedrun challenges to go for. I'd say for 3D platformer fans, go for it. Viewfinder. This is the kind of one of the big puzzle games from 2023. This is the one where if you take a photograph, you can hold that photograph out and make that object appear in the space you're standing. I thought that they had so many cool ideas. They kind of bury the lead with some of their best ideas. But my two gripes with it are, one, it doesn't go far enough with some of the puzzles. It could have explored some ideas more. And two, oh my god, the game does not ever stop talking. Poinpy. This is the Netflix published mobile game from the creator of Downwell, but it's like Upwell, and you're collecting fruit to make a big juice smoothie for a space cat. It's Upwell. Really cool game. You end up feeling so cool as you like level up and get, some additional upgrades and stuff. By the end, you're stringing these crazy runs together where you feel like such a freaking superstar. It's so satisfying. The game is designed so well to just make you feel good when you're doing well. Dragon Quest IV, Chapters of the Chosen. Love a good Dragon Quest game. A Dragon Quest game is just a warm potato soup on a cold winter day, man. Just warms the soul. Something about them. I liked the way that this game broke up chapters, one per character, so that you kind of have a better idea of why these characters are going on this journey. And then when they all meet up together, it's really satisfying. So I really loved my time with it. Now I need to get around to Dragon Quest VI. Final Fantasy XVI. This game is not an RPG, it's an action game, but I loved my time with it. Love the dark fantasy story. I think the characters and their performances in most cases were very, very, very good. The soundtrack is incredible, and I liked the action combat system. It is a little easy, but it's kind of a make your own fun type of game. You have to want to mix and match the icon abilities in order to see what you can pull off. But if you go in with that mentality and you're into the vibe, you'll like it. Orcs and Elves. This is a DS game. This is a first-person dungeon crawler. It's in like the Doom RPG engine. Beautiful game, runs at like 60 FPS on the DS. And it was a lot of fun. You get different weapons. You have like swords and magic and all sorts of stuff. It's not like a roguelike or anything. It's discrete, handcrafted levels. And it's really freaking cool. I think that more people should check this out. It's just that the cover art makes you think that it's going to be really generic. Zombie Revenge on the Dreamcast. The most Dreamcast-ass game you can imagine, or one of them. You just got to play gun mode, okay? You got to play gun mode, and then you'll get through it. I think that it is, it's got all the pluses and minuses of a Dreamcast game. It's got that arcadey feel, that poor voice acting, and it's just good arcadey gameplay. So it's not going to be like anyone's favorite video game in the world, but if you want that type of experience, it's cool. Irritating Stick. This is the game where you play as a stick and you're avoiding touching the edges of the screen. It's really not as difficult as it sounds. I loved this game. I played it for the Polymedia charity stream this year. And honestly, my biggest gripe is that it's too short. It's like 5 levels, and I was able to get through all of them in like somewhere between 1 and 2 hours. So hopefully, I don't know, maybe 25 years from now we'll see a sequel. I'd like more Irritating Stick. Trips Voyage. This is a I'm going to need a drink here in a second. I got to find a game I can dunk on. Trips Voyage is an incredible 3D platformer made in Media Molecule's Dreams engine. It plays just like a Mario game. You can tell that they were really inspired by Mario Odyssey. It blows me away how good this is for like either a solo developer or a small team. It exceeds expectations. It should not be in Dreams. It should be a full-fledged game. Just incredible. If you have Dreams, please play it. Archdream. This is the pack-in game that comes with Dreams, because I was already in Dreams. Why not finally finish it? Not my favorite Dreams game. So much so that I'm going to take a sip of my beverage. Man, hard to talk this fast for this long. Yeah, Artstream, they do a lot of variety, and it's a good demonstration of what Dreams is capable of. But if it was a game on its own, I wouldn't be super into it. I only kind of like it in the context of Dreams. Yoshi's Island DS. This one gets dunked on a little more than I think it deserves to. Yoshi's Island on Super Nintendo is one of my all-time favorite games ever. It's one of my favorite 2D platformers. I think one of the best ones ever made. And Yoshi's Island DS is a perfectly serviceable follow-up to that game. It doesn't do it as well, but it's still fun. The mix-up this time is that they have multiple babies, like babies for Peach and for Wario and stuff like that, and they add some complexity, but I prefer the original all the same. Patrick's Parabox, incredible indie puzzle game that I played this year. Very difficult. The whole hook of this is that you can push blocks within blocks within blocks, so it's kind of like a recursive puzzle game. And it goes so far and so deep. By the end, you're pushing like strings of blocks into like infinite loops outside of like physical space. It's so weird. It gets really hard though. It's like Bob Is You, where it's great, but it gets super tough. High recommend. Slayaway Camp. Thank you to TopSpot123 for recommending this one to me. This is a mobile, I guess like a sliding puzzler, like a Sokoban style puzzler, but it's all themed after 80s slasher movies. So you play as like a murderer, and your goal is to like slide in one of the cardinal directions and solve these puzzles where you have to kill every single innocent person and then escape the level. Interesting concept, does a lot with the horror theme. Cool. Pseudo Regalia. Indie Castlevania 64 meets like the style of Bayonetta. Really like this one. Came out of nowhere for me too. It seems like it was probably not marketed too much, but yeah, you play. Yeah, it feels like a Nintendo 64 game, gated exploration, and yet it's so cool, so stylish. My only wish, my desperate wish, is that they would add a map to this game, because it can be pretty hard to remember where you need to go and remember where objects were. Daily Observer, my 2023 game of the year. Loved this. It is a daily check-in escape room game. So every day you log in, you play 20-30 minutes of it, you earn some currency, you do some exploration, you learn some information, and then, you know, as escape rooms tend to do, you start to learn that there's more than meets the eye, and you do a lot of interesting, cool stuff. This is also in Dreams. It's developed by the same developer that made Locke. If you like Dreams, please go check it out. F-Zero 99, the surprise drop. I like this more than the original F-Zero, if I'm being honest. This is on here because I was able to secure a first place win. We got the dub, but it was hard fought, and I only got one. Really cool. I like the balance. I like the addition of like the track over the track to add some strategy and give you a little bit of like a reprieve. But at this point, people are really good at the game, so I can't recommend that you go check it out, but it might still be fun. But I loved that first week of it. Sea of Stars, a great turn-based RPG by Sabotage Studios, the same folks that did The Messenger. This has gorgeous artwork, great characters that really grow on you over the course of the game, incredible music. Listen to our IndieQuest Game of the Year episode to learn more about this game. And yeah, all in all, I think it's just a great modern turn-based RPG. Pacing is a little slow at the beginning, and they give you skills pretty sparingly, but other than that, phenomenal. I got into a Kingdom Hearts mood, okay? So I played Dream Drop Distance on the 3DS. Never played this one before. I haven't played much of the spin-off Kingdom Hearts games. I've only played 1, 2, and 3, and I like this one quite a bit. It got kind of tough towards the end, at least for me. I had to do a little bit of grinding, which I don't think I've ever really had to do in a Kingdom Hearts game. And I'm sure that this adds to the story in a way that really impacts some people, but I only a little bit followed. All in all, though, Kingdom Hearts rules, and I was happy to play it. Cocoon. This is another one of the big indie puzzlers from this year. Also a recursive puzzle game where you're going into orbs that contain worlds, so worlds within worlds within worlds. Really cool. I liked the sort of just like design and visual aesthetic of it all. I think that the animations of going in and out of worlds is incredible. They have boss fights that are really fun, which is not something you can say about most puzzle games. And in general, I think that it'll go down as a favorite for many. I liked it. It was good. The Quarry, one of my big surprise favorites of the year. I love Until Dawn, and I never played The Quarry when it came out a couple years ago. Finally got around to playing it and loved my time with it. I like it more than Until Dawn, in fact. I think it is the best of this sort of like choose your own adventure, Telltale adjacent kind of horror game. And without spoiling anything, the sort of big bad in this game is cool because it adds complexity. It's not, your decisions don't just mean are your characters going to live or die. There's more to it. Corpse Party. This game was kind of a letdown for me. This is the 3DS version that I played, and I love the idea. You know, you play as these high schoolers that are trapped in this sort of like evil, haunted version of their school, and you can swap between a whole bunch of them. It's a lot of fun at first, and then you realize that you have to keep re-exploring the same environments over and over and over, but it shifts around. So you never know where you actually need to go because you are familiar with the environments, but you don't know what the game has changed on you. It'd make a better anime than a game. Haunting Ground. I played this one during horror season. In fact, you can see we're in the horror block now at this point. This is all October stuff. One of the big three on PlayStation 2, and a lot of fun. Well, sometimes a lot of fun. So this is the game with the dog, and when it's hitting, it's firing on all cylinders. Gorgeous game, cool environments, a lot of fun, interesting variety. I love the dog, of course. But the enemies chase you a little too long and a little too often. So that sort of detracted a little bit, but still I'd give it like a solid 8 out of 10. Hotel Transylvania. This is on the 3DS. Just a random licensed game that I decided to check out. It is actually a pretty competent, like gated exploration light. It's a gated exploration, but you only are backtracking in pretty basic ways, and it's somewhat repetitive. But it looks good and has a lot of cool animations, and it's a fun enough 2D platformer. I would definitely recommend it to people if you find it on the cheap. All right, the Tairyo Jigoku, which is a simple series PS2 Japanese import. I think it translates to something like The Endless Hell or something like that. It is a game where you are playing as this young woman who's trying to find her cell phone. It's got kind of like an Alice in Wonderland sort of vibe, except you're destroying a lot of bugs with golf clubs. Hard to describe, very cool game. This was a fun like surprise hit during the October season. Dredge. So this is the fishing horror game where you go out, do some fishing. You dredge the world to find debris and materials that you can then bring back and use to sell or upgrade your ship to move faster, catch better fish, etc., etc., etc. I really like the game. It's got a good loop, but the only problem is that you eventually outpace that loop and it gets a little bit repetitive. By the end of the game, I felt overpowered and I was sort of just going through the motions. Liked it though. Mad Panic Coaster, another import PS1 game. This time it is you play as these two kids on a roller coaster. The whole game is on a roller coaster, so all you're doing is you're banking corners, you're hopping over enemies, or you're like lobbing things to hit enemies out in front of you. So it's all on rails. It's extremely intense. It's got like these high energy punk rock music. It moves super fast. It's so cool. One of the cooler imports that you can check out for sure, even if it's a little tough. Rose in the Twilight is another Vita game. This was another 2D puzzle platformer. You play as two different characters. You play as a young girl who can absorb red objects and put them elsewhere, and then as a big robot who can lift heavy objects, and including the girl, and throw her around. So it's a fun, good variety of puzzles, very like bleak, dark setting, kind of like a Castlevania if everything was super desaturated. It was actually better than I thought it was going to be. Inscription ended up being one of my also surprise super hits this year. Loved my time with it. So it is it's ostensibly a card game, kind of like a deck builder roguelite. But then things start to go sideways. I can't really say too much about the game. It's one of those you just have to trust me and play it type of games. But all in all, it exceeded my expectations on pretty much every level. I loved it. Alan Wake Remastered was a game I've been meaning to play for 13 years now and finally got around to because Alan Wake 2 came out. It is good. It is fun. I love the Twin Peaksiness. I love the Stephen Kinginess of it all. I think it's a really solid game. Honestly, my only gripe with it is that it's a victim to that PS3 360 era thing where games had to be long. And so it's like 15 hours long or something like that, but it just doesn't need to be. I feel like a director's cut that's only 8 hours would be better, but still really cool. I see why it has its cult status. Need for Speed Most Wanted. I played this on the Vita. Now, I'm not usually like a racing game guy, but it's one that I had popped in randomly in the past, just a little bit. And I wanted something sort of effortless that I would play on my Vita while I was watching some YouTube or stuff like that. And at first it was touch and go. It was kind of choppy. I wasn't loving it too much. But by the end, I really liked my time with it. And I have to say that you could do worse than this port. It's pretty dang good. Blurry text, though. Birth. This is a surprise indie game to me. This is a point-and-click adventure game that was recommended to me by John of Gaming in the Wild. Thank you, John. And what a heartfelt, warm, comfortable game. You know, you're doing simple puzzles that are less about the actual difficulty of the puzzle and more about just the appreciation and the vibe, because this game has this very deliberate, very focused art style that is sort of, you know, bodies and skeletons and things like that. Oh, it's really cool. Look it up on Steam. Jusant. This is the climbing environmental adventure game. So, you know, think like climbing meets Journey. I thought I was going to like this. I ended up really liking this. It was in my top 10 for the year. I think that the climbing is mechanically very satisfying. They do a good job mixing up the environments and stuff like that. And the soundtrack is just phenomenal. I've listened to it so many times. So definitely recommend it. It's on Game Pass if you watch this video around when it came out. Planet Alana, also a Game Pass game. This is another 2D puzzle platformer. I guess I played a lot of those this year. This one is this is the type of game where the package is sort of greater than the sum of its parts, or rather, one part is pulled up by the others. Visually, it's got this incredible painterly kind of art style, and the soundtrack, the score is like a movie score. It's so good. The gameplay itself is pretty average, but those other pieces really elevate it. Super Mario Bros. Wonder, so much creativity packed into every level, right? I like that the levels are short, concise, they don't overstay their welcome, but it's just about having fun. The game is not focused on difficulty. It's about them saying, hey, we had another cool idea. What do you think of this? Hey, what about this idea? This is pretty fun, right? And I think that that's kind of the exact right way to design a 2D Mario game. I don't think that there's a better example of sort of the Nintendo design ethos than Super Mario Bros. Wonder. Alan Wake 2. I played Alan Wake Remastered because I wanted to play Alan Wake 2. I ended up loving my time with Alan Wake 2. This was my second favorite game of the year because I think that it's kind of the pseudo sequel to Control that I always wanted. I'm loving the Remedyverse. This game does so much cool stuff visually. It has gorgeous environments, good use of soundtrack. The shooting is extremely mid, but it's one of those games where it's fine to just drop it onto easy and appreciate the wild ride that you're on. Nova 111, another Vita game. It's hard to describe this one. It's kind of a top-down, turn-based roguelike. So kind of like a Shiren the Wanderer game, but like you control a spaceship. It's weird. I like the idea of it. I didn't love the sense of humor. The sense of humor was a little early 2000s, but it is creative, and I've never played anything else that's quite like it. So even though it didn't, rise above like a C+ for me, still don't regret my time with it. Oh, Chants of Sinar. This is an indie game where you are deciphering language from context clues, and again, one of my all-time favorites from this year. This is also in my top 10 games list. So much fun, and I'm loving this Metroidvania genre, as I've heard it called. That's all about like just gating you based on your own knowledge and understanding of the world. This was really fun to play through with my fiance because we could bounce ideas off of each other, and yeah, just creative, clever, good puzzle solving. SteamWorld Dig, I decided to go back and check out an indie classic I'd never played before, and I see why this game was hyped up at the time. It's a little bit of like randomized levels roguelike action with some gated exploration, and the upgrades are all kind of fun and meaningful. It's got a good loop to it. It's not too long. It doesn't overstay its welcome. It's simple but satisfying. That's exactly what you wanted an indie game from like 2013 to be, right? Like competent, simple, satisfying. Every year on Christmas, or as close to Christmas as I can, I play through Christmas Nights into Dreams. I've been doing this for the last like 5 years. No, more than 5 years. And so I decided to pop this one in. It's good to have a cozy Christmas tradition. I ended up playing this one on Christmas Eve. And if you've never played Christmas Nights into Dreams, it's very short. It's like 3 levels. It takes like 10 minutes to play through. So it's not a particularly arduous task. But it's always nice to get that Saturn humming on Christmas Eve. Lies of P. What a surprise roguelike or Souls like this was. At first I couldn't take the Pinocchio theme seriously when I heard about the game, but when you play it, it actually works really well. Great combat system. It has a good blend of having you dodge and having you attack and having you parry. It's kind of all three in equal measure. It feels more balanced than something like Sekiro, and I would say that if this was a FromSoft Souls game, it would be in my top half of Souls games. Really loved it. And the last game that we're going to talk about, Sonic Superstars. This is the most recent 2D Sonic game, although it's got 3D models. It is fun and well made, but it's very patchy. Some parts are great and some parts are rough. Particularly the bosses are rough. They take way too long. But I think that the environment design, the variety of levels is really cool. I like playing as all the characters. Especially it's cool that you can play as Amy. And yeah, it's a totally fun Sonic game. We did it. We made it all the way through. 40 minutes and 30 seconds. Honestly, looking back, I barely went over on any of them. We got it pretty close. My voice is going out, but yeah. That is every game that I played this year, or that I beat this year. There's some games that I played but didn't beat this year, but if you want to know all 80 games that I played through, there you go. If you're wondering how I was managed to play 80 games, as you look at this, you can tell a lot of these are shorter. A lot of these are indie games. I play a lot of 3 to 5 or 6 hour experiences. And then I try to pepper in some stuff like Final Fantasy 16, Dragon Quest IV, Grandia along the way. But great year. More games than I expected to play in a year where my son was born, but also a big part of that is that I had the first half of the year to knock a whole bunch of stuff out. So thank you for watching. Hopefully you had a good 2023 as well. Let me know some of the favorite games that you finished in 2023, even if they didn't come out in 2023. And I will talk to you soon. Peace.